Hey everyone, it's Emily with Hearty. Welcome back to the channel. Today I want to show you how I make our simple skirts with pockets, just in time for either Easter, spring, or summertime. These skirts are super simple, requires no pattern. I've always loved making coordinated outfits for our kids for Easter time, and this simple spring skirt with pockets is something that can go from Easter all the way into the summer months. So a couple of things to note before we get started. Fabric. For this particular kind of fabric, which is a little bit more stretchy, and I decided not to pre-wash it. Now, if you're working with a cotton or another kind of poly, you're gonna wanna wash the fabric before you start cutting out your pieces to sew. And that just allows the piece to shrink in the wash machine before you cut it out. So after you cut it out, it is already pre-shrunk, and you don't have to worry about your skirt shrinking after you have to wash it the first time. So with this kind of fabric, I have a little bit of a stretch in it, and so I'm going to determine which way it's more stretchy. The way the fabric stretches this way is the way I want it to go around the waist. So I'm going to keep a note of that when I'm cutting these pieces out. Also, we're talking about a waistband. I've just selected this gold shiny band. You can use whatever kind of elastic you want. And again, this band is kind of showy and it's meant to go on the outside of the fabric, whereas you may also decide that you don't want this kind of fabric sticking out on the outside, and you can do a hem on the top of your skirt and encase a piece of elastic inside the top of the skirt. Before I start cutting, I made sure to measure all three of my girls for their skirts. I'm gonna start with Ren's, which is a little bit smaller. I also know their style a little bit. So my oldest wants something a little bit more straight and A-line. My younger one wants something that she can twirl in. So I'm going to be doubling up that fabric a bit more in order to have it gather, in order to have it fly out when she spins. So Ren's waist is 22 inches around, and I measured her length from like her hip to where I thought it made sense on her leg to go, and that's about 12 inches. So I'm going to do a little bit of math. So now if we're removing the whole pattern part of this, we still have to do a little bit of figuring, which is when I get my calculator out. Okay, let's see if you can see this. So Ren's waist is 22.5 inches around. So what I'm gonna do on my calculator, I'm going to hit 22.5 divided by 2, because I want to be able to cut out 2 pieces of fabric to make this skirt. Okay, so that's 11.25. Now, because I want this skirt to be a little bit more full and have more gathering at the top, I'm going to multiply it by 1.5. If you wanted it even more fuller, you could multiply it by 2. Okay, so I'm going to make each of my pieces, we could round up for easy figuring, 17 inches wide. Now you can make quick work of this by doubling your fabric in half and cutting out those 2 pieces exactly the same. Again, I figured out that this is the stretchy way of the fabric. So again, this is gonna be my 17 inches going this way. So this is gonna be where my waist goes. Another tip is to always make the pieces bigger than you think, than undercutting it and making it too small. You can always go back and take in seams to make the item smaller or gather it up more, but you can't add, well, of course you could add, but it's harder to add the fabric after the fact. I think I'm gonna leave it at 15 just because it's where I'm at now. It's less shifting, and it gives me a little bit of room on the bottom to make a hem. A nice white hem is always what I prefer. So when we're talking about the length, I'm always adding at least 3 inches. That's 1 inch on the top for a hem, for the either attaching the elastic or creating a casing for the elastic on the top, and then also 2 inches on the bottom for a nice large hem. And I like using this method to cut because then I know that it's the same length, width all the way through. And now remember, I'm cutting 2 pieces at one time, so I'm measuring them and cutting them at the same time so I can make sure that they're going to be the same measurements. So when I open this up, of course I'm going to have a fold down here, which represents where I folded it over, but since we want 2 pieces, I'm going to cut that now. All right, so we have 2 pieces for Ren's skirt now. Now I like having 2 different pieces in a skirt so that I can add pockets on the sides. So I'm going to show you my favorite pocket pattern and how to insert a pocket into a skirt like this. Now you could easily translate that into inserting a pocket into your favorite garment that does not have pockets. Like maybe you have a dress in your closet that has no pockets and it bothers you that doesn't have any pockets. I'm going to show you how to put a pocket in today. So once you got your skirt pieces cut out, you can cut out some pockets. So I have a favorite pocket pattern. There's a million different ways to make a pocket. This is just happens to be one that I really like because it works well for me, it fits everybody, and it seems like it makes everybody happy. So I have an adult pattern and then I have a kids pocket pattern. So today I'm going to use the kids pattern. I will include this on the blog post so that you can have it too, and you can just print it off and use it with your skirt pattern. I want you to keep this in mind when you're making this skirt. So although I am making this for my 5-year-old daughter, you can take the way that I set this up, the way I measured it out, and create a skirt for anybody you would like. You can make a skirt for yourself. You can make a skirt for a sister or a friend or a neighbor or a young girl or an older girl. It doesn't really matter. All of the math is the same no matter what size of skirt you want to make. So let's cut out the pocket pieces next. So again, I'm just going to fold up this fabric, and for pockets, you need a total of 2 pieces per pocket. So I have to cut out 4 pieces total because I want 2 pockets. So the next thing we're going to want to do now that our pockets are cut out is to attach them to our skirt. So we have 2 pieces of pockets on this skirt, and we have 2 pieces of pockets on this skirt, and they're all laid right sides together. And I brought the pocket top down 2 inches from the top since we are going to add this elastic waistband to the top of the skirt. Okay, so now we're going to go and sew each individual piece of pocket together on our skirts. Then I'm just going to use a straight stitch to sew these pockets right sides together on each panel of the skirt. Okay, so my first panel of skirt is done, so I'll just show you what that looks like here. You can see my right sides are together on this side and also this side when I flip this out. And so those are my pocket. I'm going to do the second panel just like this. Alright, there's our second panel. So upside down, but you can see here's my top and here's my 2 pockets all set to go. The next thing I'm going to do is lay one piece with the right side up, and I'm going to lay the next piece right side down, so we have them to be right sides together. Line up everything including the pockets, and then I'm going to go ahead and sew all the way around, and then I'm going to sew down and around guys. Okay, so I've got all of them pinned on this side, and I'm just gonna start on this side. And then we have our skirt sewn together. You can see our pockets here and here, and the sides are sewn together. Next thing I want to do is give this a nice press. And no matter what kind of fabric you're using, at different times during this sewing process, you'll want to just press it up so that it's nice and flat before you move on to different parts of sewing. It's just sort of a nice way to keep the garment looking nice the whole way through, so when you finish, it really looks like a nice finished product. All right, I'm going to turn this inside out after I've pressed it good. Again, you may decide that you would like to finish the outsides of these pockets. I still haven't really decided if I want to yet or not with the way this fabric lays. It's kind of nice that it's hidden as you see the garment from the side. You can't really tell where the pockets are until that opening opens, which I kind of like. It's sort of hidden. Putting a stitch line on that pocket will definitely reveal that it's a pocket. I'm going to go ahead and cut my elastic at this time too. And the way you measure this elastic, her waist is 22.5 inches around. So I'm going to make it a little bit less than 22.5 inches. I'm going to make it 1 inch smaller than the waist. So I still have enough to be able to close that waistband up and have a little bit of seam allowance here. I'm going to just remove 1 inch from this measurement here. And again, you can always tighten things up. You can't loosen things up as easy. So 21.5 is where I'm going to cut this at. Realize your top from your bottom. This is my top. So I'm going to just do a simple rolled hem all the way around. So I'm just folding this over once and then once more again. Okay, so then we've got our professional looping. Okay, so once we've got the top with a nice little hem there, we're going to apply the waistband. And as you can tell, the waistband is way shorter than the length around this skirt. So we're going to first put this waistband together. So I'm just going to put my right sides together on the waistband and sew a seam. So now you can see we have a back and a front. All right, and so we want to make sure that this seam of the waistband is in the back. So we're going to find the back center by simply folding this in half and pulling this out, and that is our center. So I'm going to open that back up, place my center there. Halfway up the width of this band, and then I'm just going to pin. Guys, with the side seams. So the side seams are very defined by our stitching here. So we're going to find the side seams by spreading that out and finding our sides and pinning both sides. So you can see that we have still on every quarter, we have this fabric that's just loose and away from the waistband. So you can decide to either create some pleats by doing like this, how a pleat would look if we did that. And maybe you decide you want a pleat in the front, a couple of pleats in the front, and maybe it's just bunched up in the back. And you can decide to do that too. For this one, I think we'll do a couple little pleats in the front, and then we'll have it pleated in the back. So creating a pleat, basically just folding the fabric over, and now you want to kind of split this fabric up. So here is what you have to work with to make your pleat. Generally, your pleats move away from the front center. This is what the front looks like. Here are the two little pleats that I have here. And whatever you do on the front side, on this side, you also want to make sure you do on this side. So you're mimicking those same pleats right over here. And I'll just eyeball about the size that those pleats are, and then pin them in place. This can get a little tricky as you're trying to work with all of this fabric right all up in your area, but just take your time, you'll get it. And just go back and forth until you're satisfied with how it looks from the outside. All right, so as for the back, you could do the same thing like this. We've got one pleat there, and I'm going to mimic that same size of pleat over here, making sure they're going the same direction. So once you've got your entire skirt fabric attached to your waistband, then you can start sewing. Now I'm going to move my machine to a zigzag, probably about a 3 and a 3.5. I'm just gonna see how I like that. Yep, I think that's good. Always starting with the back so that it ends in the back. It starts in the back and ends in the back. So you can see now we've got our waistband, and because we use that zigzag stitch, it allows the waistband to actually do what the elastic is meant to do, and that is stretch around the waistline. Now if I get this on my 5-year-old and I decide this is too big, I can go back and I can remove or tuck this in or create another pleat. There's all sorts of different ways to make this smaller. The next thing we're going to do is work on the hem on the bottom. Now, I'm going to try this on Ren before we do the hemming on the bottom. I'm excited. What do you think? Give it a twirl about. How about pockets? Does the pockets work? Oh, they feel good. See how much shorter do we want to make it? The last thing we're going to do is finish off this hem. So I'm taking just about 1/4 inch, rolling that under, and then creating about a 1 inch hem on the bottom. So now we have a little hem on the bottom. I'm just going to press this really nice, and then we'll try it on. Does it feel good? Thanks so much for joining us while we make this simple skirt with pockets. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you do,
We've got so many other sewing tutorials for you here on this channel. I'll see you in the next video.